So I just read a really, really good book, and I want to tell you guys about it. Hello and welcome to the Ponderings of Pete. I am Pete, and this is my channel. Thank you for coming. I'm really excited to make this video, and I'm excited for you guys kind of just to hear about this book. It's really good. If it's your first time coming, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. If it's your first time coming, thank you so much. I really appreciate you tuning in. If you want to hear more from me from the channel, click the subscribe button down below. There's a bell notification you can put on that sets it to all as well, so you can get notifications for all of my videos, not just ones that YouTube probably thinks you might like. If you have thoughts, if you've read this book, if you want to read this book or whatever, just comment down below your thoughts on the video, on the book. And if you would be so kind, a like would also help with the algorithm, because the algorithm is mysterious. If you are coming back, all of that, of course, if you have comments on the book, if you have comments on the video, like, let me know down below. I love, talking to you guys. So thank you so much. And just thank you for coming back and tuning in again. I really appreciate you guys watching my videos. Quick thing, this will be starting to be a spoiler-free video, but about halfway through, maybe we'll see how it balances out. There will be spoilers. I will try to post timestamps down below. There's one or two things tips that I'll give you for reading this book that I'll mention after the end of the non-spoiler section, so that'll also be down in timestamps, hopefully. So let's talk about Grace of Kings in a non-spoiler way, which is going to be interesting. Additional note, I did just get off a live stream. Some of you may have seen it. It was on Ian the Reader's channel. He is here, and it will be linked down below. This was a Grace of Kings spoiler live stream with Ian, with Nico from Nico's Book Reviews, and Fina from Fina Reads. Go ahead and check out their channels, which are also linked down below. And just check out the live show if you're interested in a spoiler discussion from the people that enjoyed the book. I mean, not all of us enjoyed it like crazy amounts, but it was a fun live show just to talk about all the different things. So I actually just came from that. For you guys, it was yesterday. For me, it was like an hour or two ago. And I'd get my thoughts together, and then now I'm filming this. So, Grace of Kings non-spoiler section. Let's talk about it. Let's start out with what the heck is Grace of Kings about. So, there are two main characters in Grace of Kings, but they're not necessarily main characters in the way you normally think of them. Like, it's not a very, very focused story about these characters' day-to-day lives. We have Mata, and we have Kuni. And these two live in a world that was just conquered. The Emperor and his nation came from the islands, and they have conquered this main continent in the archipelago, or the biggest island in this archipelago. And this is the first time that these islands have been united ever. Like, this is the very first emperor to exist. And Mata and Kuni have very different relationships with this. Mata is the last son of a line of warrior generals that was just wiped out by the emperor. Kuni is just like a street kid, a street urchin almost. He has parents. Of course, his parents are not dead. It's not one of those stories. After, a brief prologue, essentially, of them as children, we skip to, not modern day, but until the two main characters are in their early 20s, essentially. Mati has grown up a warrior, instructed by his uncle while they were in hiding. He was instructed to be honorable. He was instructed to be great, to be good, to embody the ideals that were passed on by his father. Kuni grew up, and he is kind of a layabout and a street gang leader that's liked by a lot of people. Like, he's not a despicable person, but he's still a street gang leader with potential and ambition. But he doesn't quite know how to focus that ambition yet, or anything along those lines. And this is where our story starts. Where does it end? Crazy places! I can't tell you. You have to read the book to find out. This book goes so many years. It takes place over a number of years. Sometimes it almost feels like some sort of historical fiction, in the sense that it has a very zoomed out perspective at times. So it tells you about sometimes it will tell you about these battles that are happening, and sometimes you'll get boots on the ground, but sometimes you'll get just, hi, this happened and this person routed this place. And then you'll get a very zoomed in perspective of somebody's viewpoint after the battles. It's just so interesting because the character work in this book is so different. Concerning Mata and Kuni, it feels like you don't get to know their characters until the last half of the book. Like, you sort of get to know their characters, but you really dive into their characters in the last half, which is so fascinating because the first half you deal with bandit leaders and rebellion and all this other jazz to show what's happening in the world, to show what Mata and Kuni are dealing with around them. And then the last half of the book, it's very, very heavily focused on the two of them. And there's still the zoom in and zoom out perspective in the last half, but it's still, you get these intense moments with these characters, and the themes in this book are amazing. There are a lot of layers to the themes in this book. Some of the general ones you could put are marriage, for certain, leadership, lots and lots of themes of leadership in this book, and friendship, of like who are your friends? What do your friends say about you? How do your friends affect you in your life? Who your friends are, that is. With marriage, like, there's some great explorations of what a marriage is, and with leadership you have explorations of like the difference between a good man and a great man. What choices are you willing to make as a leader, and how will you be remembered by history? Or what mark have you made on it? And it's great. Like, he does it, Ken Liu does this so well in such a different way than I'm used to. The writing style is a lot different. I wouldn't say that's the main issue. From what I remember, what I've been told on Goodreads, this one has kind of a lower star rating. Like, I think it's, I don't really know what it is, but a lot of people think it has a lower star rating than it deserves. And the main issue that they see is that it is marketed as an Asian Game of Thrones. So, I don't think I mentioned this, but this is an Asian-inspired fantasy. It's great, amazing, and it doesn't feel like Game of Thrones. The culture is completely different. The results of the politics, like, there's definitely political intrigue. Like, the premise sounds like Game of Thrones. The execution, completely different. Game of Thrones, everybody's a piece of crap, honestly. Most people. Vast majority of them. In this book, are there a lot of betrayals? Yes, there are. Are people portrayed as pieces of crap? Sometimes. But there's also lights of hope. In our main characters and side characters, like, there's a little bit more positivity in this. But it also feels a lot more historically based, despite Game of Thrones being heavily inspired by the War of Roses. This is also heavily inspired by Chinese history. In fact, you could probably point to some of these characters and connect them to real-life counterparts. Another thing that differentiates them is this feels like it has a sense of purpose. I don't feel like Game of Thrones, even from the beginning, really has a sense of where do you think this is going to end. Even book to book, especially book to book, you don't know where the book's going to end. This honestly feels a lot like a standalone. You could read Grace of Kings, and if you don't like it, you could come away completely satisfied with the ending because it's a good ending. And the involvement of the gods, specifically, because that's something that is there, like the gods of these nations are trying to interfere with humans. And that touches onto another theme about godly interference, about what are our actions predetermined? Do we have free will? But this involvement of the gods is one element that gives this book individually a sense of purpose. Because the gods want something, and different people want different things. Different humans want different things, but the gods, like, individually, they have their own things, but the gods give the sense of purpose to, like, inevitability to what's probably going to happen. Brilliant book. There is a lot of war in this book, but it's not graphically described, and it's not always detailed, like, described in detail. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. But not on a boots of ground from an individual perspective normally. The pacing in this book is really interesting because a normal writer would have taken 3 books just to write this one book. But Ken Liu actually writes this book and writes it well to give you all the information you need and the sweeps of strategy and how the war has turned out. It's honestly fantastic. I highly recommend you go and buy it and get into this series because it's beautiful. Kuni is one of my favorite characters of all time right now because he's amazing. That being said, I do have 2 tips that will be useful for you. So the first one is characters, specifically the character index. Like, there's a cast of characters, a dramatis personae at the very beginning. and I probably butchered that pronunciation. Not all of the characters in this book make it into that list. And there are a lot of characters that are introduced, specifically in the first half, that really don't matter in the long stretch. They could die, they could leave, they could just become inconsequential. And essentially, if you look at that, if you're confused about who somebody is, and you can't find them on that character list, it is not a big deal. A vast majority, with 2 exceptions, of the cast of characters that are important are on that list. The 2 exceptions, there are 2 very obvious female characters that are important that you meet in like the back third of the book. Outside of that, there is nobody else who is really not in the cast of characters is that important for you to remember who they are. Theoretically, you'd remember all the characters, right? Because they all connected with you and they're all awesome. But that's not realistic, especially with a large cast of characters such as this. I would say it's comparable to Malazan in the number of characters that it introduces. A little bit less, maybe. But unlike Malazan, we don't get every single character in the book in the cast of characters at the very beginning. Erickson kind of goes a little bit overboard in that, honestly. And then the second tip would be if you are a map person, keep in mind that the map is west-oriented. So normally we have north pointing up in our maps. In this one, west is pointing upwards and northwards is going to be to your right when you are looking at the book. Very interesting choice. Led to a bunch of very confusing searches on the map for certain cities when they're like, oh, we're going to go we're going to go north from so-and-so city to go to that city. And I'm just like, I go up and I'm like, there's nothing there but water. What's going on? And then I'm like, wait. That being said, that's all my thoughts for a non-spoiler review. Get the book. It's great. Thank you for watching. And if you are sticking around, I'll see you in a second. Spoiler time. Spoiler time. Spoiler time. All right, so I got a list of things. First of all, let's talk about Kuni. Kuni was great. Probably one of my favorite characters in fantasy right now. And I'll be honest, part of this is because I see a lot of me in him. He is caring. He wants to do interesting things with his life, even though he has no focus about what those interesting things are at the beginning of the book. And then he just does the most interesting thing. Am I become emperor of the world? No, I'm not. Trust me. I don't have an amazing wife like Gia to back me up on this, and I think it's highly unlikely that I could do that sort of thing. And because he cares about people, this is also almost a flaw for him as well. Because he cares, because he listens to his friends, his advisors, sometimes they end up leading him places he doesn't want to go, especially with that ending, because he understood that less blood would be lost, and he cares so much. They had essentially to sacrifice his brother, which is heartbreaking. I understood it. I understood why it had to be done, and I just was saddening. Though the one thing that Kuni did that I'm just like, please no, was when he invaded the capital and he slept with all those women because they were the emperor's harem or whatever. Yeah, no, I was furious with him at that. I was mad at him and Gia for doing those things and cheating on each other. But speaking of that, I really, really loved how they portrayed the reconciliation and really addressed the issue that was coming up. Yeah, they were persuaded, but having a marriage that actually works at being a marriage and it being shown on screen in fantasy is pretty rare. Specifically, the issue that they dealt with was idealization of a spouse. This is something that is in society that is not talked about at all. It's something that happens constantly. With Facebook, with Instagram, with all these things, people feel the pressure to idealize their significant other or make them into this ideal thing or only pursue people that are this ideal that is pushed on them by social media, by the need to be better. And it's stupid. And, we also push that on ourselves. I personally had issues with this when I was younger. I've since been told to cut it out, and I recognized it was this is something that's really toxic to myself and to my relationships. And it's not something you realize you're doing. There's a difference between wanting a wife with a couple of attributes or a husband with a couple of different attributes and saying, oh my gosh, I want this, blah, 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 in a wife and in a husband, or being in a relationship, being in a marriage, and saying, being away like they were, and thinking of your husband or spouse, your husband, your wife, or whatever, as this ideal person, and allowing no bad words against them, and just like loving the ideal more than loving the person. You can't love an ideal because the person that is behind that ideal will always let you down because they're not perfect. They're not as perfect as your brain makes them out to be. So I really liked them really kind of confronting that specific thing. I really haven't seen that topic approached very much at all, if at all. I can't remember that. If I've ever read a book where this is addressed this directly. While I disagreed with the direction they went, especially with Gia being like, oh yeah, you should have another wife. I think it made sense culturally, what they did. And I liked that they resolved their issues. And the science. Oh, I just want to say that I love the science in here. And like whether it was the mathematics turned into an augury for the gods, or it was the mechanical narwhal submarines, or the airships, like the submarines were awesome. Like the fact that he was like, we're going to take steam power and put it in here and create a system that doesn't foul up the air like a coal-powered engine would, and uses natural resources to power the thing that we're using. That was brilliant. Like, I loved that. That was so cool. I didn't mind them info dumping the entire mechanical thing, and how he foreshadowed it was great. Like, I hope we get more of that. I've been told we will be, so I'm excited. There's something about cow stomachs. I don't know. I have thoughts about what that could be about, probably. Another one was free will and destiny. Like, okay, do the gods determine where we go in life? Are our dreams, are they destined to be failures? Or are they just written by the gods? I loved this theme. It's definitely a theme that is set up pretty early with the gods, with Mata being just harped on as like the double-pupiled man. He's the gods are meddling with his life. And yet he ended up the one that failed. You even have a strange mirror in the first emperor for Kuni and Mata, which is so interesting because Mata had the conquering capabilities of the emperor, whereas Kuni had the vision for the future that the emperor tried to institute. The emperor almost was some of the good and bad parts of both of them, because I could totally see Mata being an emperor, enslaving people because he thinks it's honorable, and because an honorable man is just simply punishing dishonorable men. Like, it's easy to justify. But the whole dialogue of the gods throughout the book was utterly fascinating, and I really hope to see more of that in future books, just because it was a really, really cool element. Leadership. What's the difference between a great man and a good man? Oh my gosh. You have Mata, who is a great man, trying to learn to become a good man through Mira, but it turned out to be too little too late. Whereas you have Kuni, who is a good man, trying to learn to become a great man, because he's being pushed by his wife, he's being pushed by all the people around him, because they see the potential in him for being a great man. And then the sacrifices that Kuni has to make are heartbreaking. I've mentioned those before. Seeing him follow Kugo's advice to betray Mata, I thought, like, in the live show, there was one or two people that said that kind of felt sudden. And for me, I was like, no, that doesn't make perfect sense. As someone who cares, it makes you slightly more susceptible to those around you in terms of them persuading you to do something you wouldn't normally do. And that's what we have here, because Kugo had good logic. Logically, he was like, yeah, this is going to happen, and you're just going to cause more bloodshed. And Kuni caring and listening to his opinion is just like, yeah, I can't really find much fault other than the fact I'm going to have to betray my brother. I just wanted to give him a hug, because that's a terrible decision to make. Because great men are the ones who are willing to make decisions that others may not want to. Or at least that's one element of it. If you want more of my thoughts, definitely check out the live show. I had a really fun time talking with everybody on it. And we'll probably do more as I read Wall of Storms next month. We're probably going to do another one in May. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Remember to get some rest. It's very important.